Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Soroyce. Enjoy the show.
You know, I just realized, John, we don't have Tom in the open. We might need to squeeze him in there at some point. But the last time we did that with Jake, he flew the coop. What do you think? Has Tom earned his spot into the open yet?
Tom's been here, I think, more than Jake has.
I don't know about that.
Pretty close.
What do you think, Caden? Has he earned his wings, his stripes?
So far, so good.
Well, I don't want to pay for it. So for now, we're going to go without Tom in the open. But we are still the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. And you are still listening to the Blue Collar Ballers. And you can find all of our content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, Twitch, and on Instagram at armchair_fantasy_football. Facebook at Armchair Fantasy Football. And on Twitter at Armchair FF Pod. And you can, of course, email us at armchairfb@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. And this is the Working Class Podcast. And I am here with my friends Tom and John, and I'm DJ. And we welcome you back to another installment of the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, where today we're talking our all breakdown teams. We've got 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a tight end, and a quarterback. Each of us have assembled a roster of guys that we think are going to take a step back in 2020. But first, let's get into the top 5 headlines for today. Number 5, Lamar Jackson is fine after a tumble from a jet ski, fellas. What do you think of that?
The video was funny.
I did not see the video. Tell me more.
Playing flag football on the beach, he was juking and jiving and ran over near the side of the water. And
so he wasn't riding on
he wasn't
a jet
riding.
ski?
He was riding. The guy pushed him over and he flipped over the jet ski.
Okay, so here's what it says from Roto World. ESPN's Jameson Hensley reports Ravens QB Lamar Jackson is fine after tumbling over a jet ski in a video posted on social media. And it goes on to say, Jackson appeared to tumble somewhat awkwardly while messing around with some friends at the beach. But the 2019 MVP is reportedly fine. The franchise quarterback of the Ravens enters 2020 as the near consensus fantasy QB1, which I think we're going to discuss today. Lamar, just play football at the Ravens facility, I guess would be what I have to say about this. I'm sure the Ravens are not pumped about Lamar Jackson putting himself at risk in a very pointless flag football game that apparently has a Nickelodeon Double Dare style obstacle course, including jet skis. Doesn't seem like ideal playing conditions, John.
Double Dare, that brings back some memories.
Yeah, he's going to get slimed if he keeps doing stuff like that. So, do we have to worry about Lamar Jackson?
I don't think
moving forward, doing dumb things? Do you think the Ravens are going to scold him for this and tell him?
They'll probably bring him in the
nice
office
in the
and say, you probably shouldn't be on social media with this. But he'll probably still do things that you don't approve of.
I think so. He's fast. So, I mean, runners got to run, man. Just stay away from the jet skis.
He's staying conditioned. I will say that from the video I saw.
I wonder if, would you want to play flag football against Lamar Jackson? What does that look like?
In sand.
Is it just a touchdown every play?
He juked and jived around the 4 guys on the beach with him. He was gone.
Oh, really? I got to see this video.
Oh, he's fast. He's very fast.
What's the point of playing flag football against Lamar Jackson?
It's summer and, hey, social distancing's out the window.
To say that you did it, I guess, would be the point of it. But that's pretty funny. Moving on to number 4, Sony Michel. ESPN's Mike Rice reports Patriots running back Sony Michel is recovering from foot surgery. The procedure is reportedly being viewed as more maintenance-based to relieve discomfort for Michel, who initially went under the knife in May. His ongoing rehab in Foxborough will ultimately determine whether he opens on the team's PUP list to begin camp in late July. Michel has notoriously battled chronic knee injuries dating back to high school, but has only missed 3 games in his professional career. It's still a giant red flag for his status in any best ball leagues as a second-year runner. Damian Harris could potentially open the year as New England's starter if Michel misses any time. Once again, from Roto World, is there anything to read into here, starting with you, Tom?
Well, if he goes on the PUP list, then yes, if the injury is more severe than they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and if Damian Harris starts as the starting running back of the Patriots, there may be no looking back. He might just take that job and never look back. What do you think of that, John?
They drafted Harris for a reason, and I think it's going to come in handy here. Sony scares me. He really does. He scared me before the injury, but now it scares me even more.
Yeah. Gives me some pause about Michelle, but it also, he got fixed up. So surgery is intended to make you better. So if he is out there week 1, I don't know, man. Right now, I guess I'm staying away from that backfield is what I'm thinking. I don't know if you guys are on the same page of neither there.
He's just stay on the New England backfield every year anyway.
Yeah, that's always the best practice. All right, moving on to number 3. Kareem Hunt says he understands he will be the Browns' number 2 back this season and is fine being part of a 1-2 punch. Quote, they run a lot of 2 backs. Hunt said of new coach Kevin Stefanski's system, I see myself just coming in and being a 1-2 punch. You know, Nick and I just coming in and taking over the game every week, which there is some bravado there, suggesting that he and Nick Chubb are going to be the heartbeat of that offense. But I don't necessarily disagree with that, and that's why I think both of these guys have value, John. I've got a hot take coming up on the next Hot Take Hotel episode that I'm not going to spoil quite yet, but it involves Kareem Hunt. I do have high hopes for him this year.
Kareem Hunt played 8 games. In those 8 games, he averaged double-digit fantasy points, all but 2 in PPR.
What do you think, Tom?
They both could get 1,000 yards rushing this year.
I totally agree.
Just
Totally agree.
set up.
And definitely 1,000 all-purpose yards for Hunt. And maybe, Chubb, I think you feel like it's implied, but again, when you look down the stretch last year, these guys had the same exact fantasy points pretty much to the numbers. So I love Kareem Hunt this year. And I love even more his value as, his ADP is very, very good. Like, I'm trying to find a really fancy word to put out there, but it's a good, solid ADP. So Kareem Hunt, draft him this year is what we're saying. Number 2, running back coach says Alvin Kamara played through 3 injuries last year. Thomas, their running back coach Joel Thomas, specifically pointed to the game against the Seahawks where injuries piled up, yet Kamara still handled 25 touches for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, because that's what Alvin Kamara does. His 75% is a lot of people's 100%, is a quote from Thomas. It goes on to say, that's why he was playing through injuries. An injured Alvin Kamara had an okay season last year. We've seen a healthy Alvin Kamara. His ADP is valuable this year as well. It's a lot lower than you could typically get him in prior years. I think, guys, Alvin Kamara could be the number 1 overall running back in 2020. What do you guys think of that? Jump right in.
It could be. You never know. If he's 100%, he's explosive on the field. He catches the ball in the backfield.
And that's not going to change. Knowing that Drew Brees is there, that's not going to change. He's still going to catch passes, and I would argue a lot more than what he caught last year. What's your projection for Kamara this year? In a healthy Kamara, presumably, John.
I think he can get 1,000 yards rushing. I know he's never done it before, but I think he can get 1,000. And he's definitely easily going to get 500 receiving yards. Last year, being 75%, he still managed to get 533 receiving yards and 81 receptions. Actually, every season he's had 81 receptions. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah. Hasn't he had that very number in
81,
2 seasons?
All 3 years.
All 3 of them.
All 3 years.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
So I think you're good for 81 this year or more.
Yeah. He finished as RB9 at 75%.
Yeah. Come on.
So easily can be a top 3.
Yeah, he's...
And with no touchdowns either. He didn't have a lot of touchdowns last year.
Can you look up his ADP for this year, John?
Yeah, he had 6 total touchdowns last year, 5 rushing, 1 receiving.
And that's on the low end. And, Latavius Murray's still going to, I think, get a lot of the goal line work, but Kamara will get some of that, and he'll catch passes. I think that number should go up from a touchdown standpoint this year. I don't know if you have his ADP.
I'm hurrying. His ADP is 5.
That's his ADP this year.
ADP is
I'm kind of surprised it's higher than I thought it would be.
Somewhere around there. That makes sense, yeah.
I thought he was a back-end first-rounder, but...
No, consensus is 5.
He was at one point, so that's moving on up, and this news is just going to make it move up potentially even more. So, number 1 on the top 5 headlines, Ezekiel Elliott tested positive for coronavirus. I look at this as a positive. Zeke's agent, Rocky Arsenault, said, quote, Elliott is feeling good. A previous report from Ian Rappaport noted several Cowboys and Texans players tested positive for COVID-19. Both teams have reportedly been following proper health protocol throughout the process. I'm telling you guys, and there's two things that I take away from this. Sure glad he got it now and not during the season. And the other thing is what I mentioned before on Hot Take Hotel. Coronavirus is going to cause chaos this year. I really firmly believe that you're going to have situations where teams, I mean, if one guy has it, how many guys could get it? And then you look at, they're going to have scrubs out there. It's almost going to be look like scabs, you know, if they were to strike. There may be situations like that. And it could cost playoff implications, certainly causes fantasy implications if they're top players. I think there's a lot to be afraid of in terms of coronavirus and the fact that these guys are going to have to quarantine, right, John?
Yes, and on top of that, they're going to get tested. They're going to miss at least 2 weeks, if not longer. I'd say 3 weeks up to a month, possibly, depending on their situation, what they're diagnosed with. No symptoms, and how they progress, and then they're going to have to get released by a doctor. Adds a whole different twist, not just to the game, but also fantasy as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a fun 2020, man. Freaking this year's half over, thank God. And hopefully once 2021 comes around, everything, all this rubbish goes with it. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting season for the NFL this year. You got any thoughts on coronavirus, Tom, and the effects that it's going to have on the NFL? You could see your 3 quarterbacks go out with coronavirus.
Oh, I know. It's going to be different because the coaches are older. They're the ones that are going to be more concerned about.
True, yeah. Yeah, and just because, like, let's face it, guys, you drive around, nobody's socially distancing. Some people are wearing their little masks, but, I mean, that's only going to do so much. And some of them don't even wear it around. I saw a lady the other day, she had her mask around her chin. I don't know that that's really effective, but, so it's, people aren't, I mean, these NFL teams, unfortunately, they have to look at these coaches and players as assets and kind of lock these guys down, you know, if they want to play it safe. But that's hard to do, man, you know, especially early 20-year-old kids. You know, they're not going to want to sit at the house while they're not playing football.
Yeah, like that video of Lamar Jackson, he's at a
right,
beach.
Yeah.
He had no mask on. None of them did.
Well, no, yeah, because nobody does. Nobody does. Nobody takes this thing seriously, but then it's made to be very serious. It's you know, it's vintage America. It's America. So, you know, whatever. I'm just glad I have Ezekiel Elliott in my keeper league, and he's getting this coronavirus out of his system, so he should be fine and playing for me all season. So
we hope. We don't know anything about second waves.
Well, typically people don't get it twice, but I'm no scientist, and I don't even think the scientists know what the heck they're doing. I mean, there's no vaccine, so we're paying these guys millions of dollars, and, you know, we have nothing to show for it at this point. So we'll see how it goes, but it's going to be interesting. My guy's getting it through his system right now, though. I'm just saying.
Check box 1.
I'm just saying. Week 1, when I see Saquon Barkley's name on there,
wow.
I'm like, sweet.
Wow.
My guy's already got it all taken care of. All right, let's get down to the all breakdown team. A little bit different episode today. We are not going to talk too much about some of the players that are on our list that we've already spoken about quite a bit. There are certain players that we've touched on in several episodes.
Where's Chris Carson?
Oh, Chris Carson, anyone? I think he just entered the room. But we're not going to talk about Chris Carson today too much. We're not going to belabor the point on Aaron Jones, who actually made the hat trick, the only player to get the hat trick and make it on all 3 of our all breakdown teams. So we're probably going to be wrong about him since we all agree on that. But we'll start with my all breakdown team, and then we'll move on to John's and then Tom's. So for me, and again, we have quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. My quarterback was easy, and you guys went in a different direction on this, and I didn't understand why. Because to me, the biggest breakdown at the quarterback position and the biggest drop in the rankings and the biggest step back this year, I think it's going to be for Ryan Tannehill. We've talked about Ryan Tannehill before, but so I'm not going to, belabor the point on him too much, but you're looking at a guy who had a 7.7 touchdown percentage in 2020, looking at a career average of 4.5. and he's been in the league a while, so that was just completely out of the norm for him. 70.3% completion percentage. His career, 63.5. Only in week 4 did Ryan Tannehill support 2 double-digit PPR receivers for his number 1 and number 2 wide receivers, being Corey Davis, A.J. Brown. This is Derrick Henry's team. Tannehill, everything went his way last year. It's not going to happen this year. And I don't know if you're going to see Tannehill in the top 15 this year. And it wouldn't surprise me. I know they just gave him a big contract, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him benched at some point this year. I really would not be surprised by that. I think Derrick Henry's going to protect him a lot. But from a fantasy asset standpoint, Tannehill's going to go backwards this year. That's my opinion. John, I'll start with you. I don't know where you're at on Ryan Tannehill or if you're in the same wheelhouse as me, but...
Ryan Tannehill has had one good season, and then we're paying him like a top 5 quarterback. I'm not sold. There is such thing as called luck, or the tide's turning. I don't think he can continue it. I really don't. He wasn't anything special in Miami, and I don't think he's going to be anything special here in Tennessee.
The only saving grace for him is the Adam Gase factor that I've talked about before. Everybody seems to be better when they get away from Adam Gase. Is that going to be the case, Tom, for Ryan Tannehill this year? Or do you agree with me where he's going to take a huge step back?
He's going to take a step back. He's been in the league 8 years. I've never had him on a fantasy team ever. And I've done multiple teams every year, and I've never even thought about him.
And he's one of those guys, when I look at his name, I'm like, yeah, I know what he did last year. But when you look at the circumstances, there's a lot of the word that John used, luck, involved there. And I look at his name, and I just can't do it. I mean, we had a league where we have what? How many roster spots on those teams? 20 roster spots on the draft we just did. And I don't even know if Tannehill was drafted. I don't think he was.
I don't think he was.
No, we start 2 quarterbacks still when he wasn't drafted.
Yeah, exactly. It was 2 QB. Tua was drafted ahead of him. A lot of, I think, Mayfield was on a team. Somebody drafted, I can't remember, but there's a lot of, Kirk Cousins was drafted.
And then dropped.
For somebody, Teddy Bridgewater, who, if Tannehill can't get on a team in a league like that, where these other quarterbacks are, I think that's all you need to know. I think people see the handwriting on the wall with Ryan Tannehill. Hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see a Cinderella story, but I don't think I am. So for my running backs, I have Chris Carson and Aaron Jones. We all know the story there. I'm not going to keep pushing that envelope and that narrative. You guys know where we all stand on those guys. But when you look at Aaron Jones, I would just say the fact that we all 3 have him on there, that's something to note. For me, the biggest thing for Aaron Jones, guys, is the touchdown regression. I don't see him achieving that touchdown number again this year. And when you take that away, that's a lot of points, right? I mean,
he had 19 touchdowns last year, and that's going to drop just because the situation is this year with the new backfield.
It's going to drop. A.J. Dillon's there. They might pass a little bit more. Aaron Rodgers.
Williams is healthy, too, which he wasn't.
Williams is healthy, and whenever Williams was out there, Aaron Jones' numbers went down. Whenever Devontae Adams was out there, Aaron Jones' numbers went down, and they went down significantly. So we're not just saying this because A.J. Dillon's there. I think that's the smallest factor in his regression. To me, it's the Adams piece. It's the Williams piece. It's the touchdown regression. The touchdown regression is the big one. I'm also not saying Aaron Jones is going to suck, but he's not going to be an RB1 this year, in my view. I look at him as a mid to late RB2 this year, and that's not where you're drafting him. Another guy that fell in our draft was Aaron Jones, so people are starting to catch on to this stuff. Wide receivers. I think you guys may not agree with my wide receivers, but I do have my reasoning for it. So the first wide receiver on my all breakdown team is Mike Evans. I look at Mike Evans as, without question, the N'Keal Harry of the Tampa Bay Bucs offense at this stage of his career. And I mean that in terms of the role that he plays, not as far as productivity at this point of their career. Obviously, that does not mirror each other. But at this stage of his career, Brady has notoriously thrown to the type of explosive players that have yak ability. And none of the players in the league literally rank higher than Chris Godwin, finishing first in the league in yak. He's going to be a huge asset to Tom Brady. Mike Evans did finish third in contested catches, but Brady hasn't chucked it up to a wide receiver to catch the 50-50 ball, to me, since Randy Moss. And the only other guy was to Rob Gronkowski, It's especially concerning for Evans given that he finished 48th in cushion and 57th in target separation. I don't think that's going to cut the mustard for TB12. Speaking of Gronk, Evans finished 13th in red zone receptions last season, which was really solid. But Rob Gronkowski's in town and will undoubtedly carve into those targets, those red zone targets. It's going to be a thing. And I also happen to think that Brady, with him in the fold and the addition of Keyshawn Vaughn, potentially Devonta Freeman, Tampa's not going to finish tops in the league in passing attempts anymore. And I think that's going to affect all of the pass catchers for the Bucs. I think it's going to affect Mike Evans the most. Guys, I look at Mike Evans as a wide receiver too this year. And he could be a low-end one at that. I know Bruce Arians wants to chuck it down the field. That's easier said than done. Bruce Arians isn't the quarterback. I'm just not convinced Mike Evans is a great fit for where this offense is headed with Tom Brady. John, what do you think of Mike Evans this year? And do you think he regresses like I think he will?
I think Mike Evans is headed for regression. Brady is not the deep thrower he used to be. He'll still take a shot here and there, but it's not. You don't have Winston at the helm anymore. You have Brady. Brady has, especially at his age now, is a dink and dunk kind of quarterback. As where Winston, there was many times they were behind, and he was just slinging it and throwing it downfield 30, 40 yards.
He wasn't very accurate downfield, though. But and the one good thing about Evans is he is a yards per reception type of guy, but he doesn't get separation like these other guys do. I think that's the big factor for him this year, is he doesn't get that separation that a guy like a Godwin or an Edelman does, or a Gronk, or even a Cameron Braid or an O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard, jury's still out on him, but you do agree that Evans is going to see a big step back this year, you think?
He won't see the 1,400 receiving yards, or I think he's safe for 1,000, but 1,100 is tops for me in this type of offense.
Yeah, I keep thinking, and I'm like, who could I compare him to from a productivity standpoint from last year? I keep thinking A.J. Brown. I think he's going to have an A.J. Brown year, what Brown did last year. And that's not going to be good for if you're, what you're accustomed to get from Mike Evans. Tom, am I being too hard on him?
Sort of. He's going to get the second cornerback on the team now. If Godwin's going to be the number one, he's going to get that number 2 cornerback down the sideline. The safety's going to be over the middle watching Gronk. So he's going to have a lot of one-on-ones down the field. And
you think so? You think? Well, I'll agree with you here. Rob Gronkowski is going to change that dynamic for sure, because teams are going to have to pay attention to him. I look at Evans. I mean, him and Godwin are both explosive, and I think that's why Brady is a guy, on a side note, that you really have to look at this year, because teams are going to have to focus on so many different pass catchers on that team, especially if you have a 2 tight end set. You know what I mean? It's going to be they're going to have their head on a swivel this year when they're going against the Tampa Bay Bucs. So I love Tom Brady this year. I just think Mike Evans is, the third wheel kind of. And I think he's going to be on the outside looking in a lot of times this season. He's going to be ownable. He's going to be a good wide receiver 2. I just don't think he's in the wide receiver 1, top 1 through 12 category anymore, as long as Brady's there. But that's my take on it. You guys think he'll creep into that category this year? And what about the consistency of him? Do you think that will be a concern? Because I think consistency is going to be a huge concern. He could have a 3-touchdown game one week, and then the next week do nothing. Tom, do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. He's going to be the Brandon Cooks of the Patriots, who was there, 70 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 5-6 touchdowns.
That's a great comp, Tom. John, whatever you
It's almost equal to last year. He only had 67 receptions. You look at his numbers, and you would think, but he only played 13 games, so even if he would have played all 16, I think he would have had about 80 or 90. His best year was obviously 2016, 96 receptions for 1321, or his 2018 year with 50.
I think he's only had over 90 receptions once in his career. I could be wrong.
96 in 2016, 86
and what was his targets that year?
Targets were 173. Last year,
he ain't going to get targeted 173
He only had 118 targets last year. His average is about 130, 140.
Yeah. He'll see, I think, 110 maybe. But he doesn't turn those targets into passes necessarily, you know what I mean? He's a guy that doesn't create a ton of separation, or get a ton of separation, I guess.
But Brady's accurate in the passing, though.
He
unlike
is.
Winston.
Yeah, but he doesn't throw passes when you know what I mean? He's not... Brady can read through every single one of his progressions, so he doesn't throw a ball if he thinks that he shouldn't. That's why he doesn't throw a lot of picks, and he doesn't take a lot of chances, and he might have to do that with Evans. So just be aware. I'm warning you guys, Mike Evans is going to be fine, but he could be... I think he's definitely in the wide receiver 2 category. And I guess you could call this a hot take, but I could see him creeping into the 3s if everything goes the way I think it might in terms of how this offense is going to go. My other guy at the wide receiver position is Allen Robinson. I got some concerns for Allen Robinson this year, and I was going to put Julian Edelman here, but then I started researching him, and I'm like, this actually could be a good transition for Julian Edelman. He's never going to get the passes that Brady has, but it might not be the crushing blow that we think it's going to be with Brady out of town. Then I looked at Allen Robinson, and Allen Robinson has only finished in the top 10 one other time in his career other than 2019. It was all the way back in 2015. Robinson was targeted heavily last year by Mitch Trubisky, but there's no doubt in my mind that he's not going to be the long-term starter in 2020. Anthony Miller is a thing. I love Miller coming out of Memphis. I have always looked at him as a slightly smaller DJ Moore, and coming out of college, I had them ranked pretty much side by side. Chicago does have the absolute easiest schedule for wide receivers in 2020, but I look at that as more of a benefit to Miller than to Robinson. Miller could even surpass Robinson if Foles is under center. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's possible. Outside of being Philadelphia's starter in 2013, Foles hasn't made a habit of throwing to his number one option at wide receiver. In fact, in 2017, Nelson Aguilar led the team in targets. And in 2015, Tavon Austin led the team in targets. Let's not forget, Chicago's added not one, not two, but 3 tight ends into the mix with Jimmy Graham, Demetrius Harris, those guys in free agency, and Cole Kmet, arguably the number 1 tight end coming out of college this year. He was drafted in the 2nd round at a position that wasn't even a need. I think that indicates how much they like him. And let's not forget, Adam Shaheen's still around. There's a lot of pass catching options added into the mix. I think Anthony Miller's primed for a nice breakout this year. And if Nick Foles is under center, guys, I think you see Allen Robinson go back to being what Allen Robinson was before. And that's just a nice, solid wide receiver 2 or 3. Where do you guys project Allen Robinson this year?
I would love to see Allen Robinson maintain what he did last year, but with a change at possible quarterback and possibly, we don't, even with the easiest schedule, we don't know what Trubisky, if he's worked on fixing anything, and obviously they're not sold on him. They brought in Foles as insurance, so if I had to guess, I think Robinson would be safe at a wide receiver 3, but has a chance for a wide receiver 2. I don't think he has that wide receiver 1 upside.
I don't. And let's not forget, Tom, that this team said we're not picking up Trubisky's option. The long term is not good for him.
No, and Trubisky likes throwing to him. Foles is a decent quarterback at best, and he doesn't
Who's going to throw to the open guy?
Exactly.
Yeah, and the open guy typically isn't the number 1 receiver on the team. I think that's the big factor in play here, guys, is it's going to be Foles. I could be wrong. Mitch Trubisky could be awesome out of the gate, and if that's the case, you get you every bit of Allen Robinson that you can find. I don't think that's going to be the case. Last year, there wasn't really a guy that they could push Mitch Trubisky with. Nick Foles is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Is he one of the best in the league? No, I agree with you. But he's got street cred. He's done it before, and he can push Mitch Trubisky, and I think he's going to push him out of the way. And that's going to be a big problem, given Foles' history of throwing to the number 2s and even number 3. Nelson Aguilar was a number 3 receiver on that team that year. You could argue Tavon Austin was as well. And then when he was in Philly before, Riley Cooper caught a ton of passes too. So I think it's bad news for Allen Robinson. I think it's good news for Anthony Miller. I just see Allen Robinson taking some big steps back this year. Again, when we talk about these guys, we're not saying they're going to be irrelevant, but you need to consider all the factors in play when you're drafting these guys, and you can never ever assume that 1 year translates to the next, because oftentimes it doesn't.
And that doesn't even account for if Montgomery spikes this year.
And they have Tariq Cohen in the house,
more
too.
run usage. They could run the ball a lot more based on the fact that they don't feel comfortable with Trubisky or even Foles. They just might change their game.
Right.
And let's say they go to a 55-45, run the ball 55% of the time and throw 45.
Right.
It all change.
And Foles, I could see Foles checking down a lot to Cohen, and I think they probably want to use Cohen a little bit more this year than they did last year. I think he was underutilized last year. They're going to make changes to that offense. I think one of them is going to be Mitch Trubisky, coincidentally. So down to my tight end, had to go Austin Hooper here. I know you guys went in a different direction, but looking at Austin Hooper, finished as a tight end 6 last year behind Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Zach Ertz, and Mark Andrews. Pretty good company to be in, I would say. And that's all while missing 3 games. Great season. But while he came out of the gate on fire, his finish was more of a wet blanket. He averaged 18.3 PPR points per game in his first 6 outings, just 11.6 in his last 7. That's a huge drop. Obviously an injury in there as well. While Cooper only gave you 3 single-digit PPR performances in 2019, he had 10 single-digit performances in 2018, 11 in 2017, and only 3 double-digit performances in 2016, but we'll give him a break there, given that that was his rookie season. My point is that while he broke out last year, he fell apart down the stretch, and that was on a team that finished 3rd in passing attempts last year, guys. 3rd in passing overall. The Browns are overloaded with pass catchers like Beckham, Landry, Hunt, Hooper, Njoku, just to name a few. And that's a team that finished 22nd in passing, by the way, with a quarterback that struggles past his first read. Last but not least, we'll talk about the new head coach in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, who drove fantasy owners absolutely insane last year in Minnesota, running an offense that seemed virtually allergic to passing, with a quarterback that some would say is better than Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins, and receivers like Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and tight ends like Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith, and they still didn't really buy into the passing game. And I don't think Stefanski's going to do that this year. I think he's going to try to protect Baker Mayfield, Tom, and I think that's going to hurt the chances of Austin Hooper. He will regress big time this year.
Oh, certainly. We already talked about Chubb and Kareem Hunt getting a lot of backfield, 1,000 yards, possibly each of them. You got Landry on one side, Beckham on the other. There's just not enough balls for him to get the 75 receptions he got last year.
And, John kind of asked earlier before the show, he's like, well, why did he go there then? And Tom and I were just, we did the money thing with our hands here. It was all about the money. They paid him more than anybody else did. That's why he's there. I don't think he cares about how many fantasy points he scores you if he's, hitting the ATM every day and getting big chunks of cash out, John. You looking at a regression, big time regression here for Hooper? I'm not talking a regression. I'm talking a big time regression. Are you on board with that?
I think he dips quite a bit here. Last year was on obviously a career year for him, only with 13 games. Take his best season ever, even in Atlanta. Well, not counting last year, but the year before, he had 71 receptions on 88 targets for 660 yards and 4 TDs. Last year, let's say he doesn't miss the 3 games. Let's say he hits 1,000 and 9 touchdowns. He's not going to see that in Cleveland, especially with the coaching change. You're going to run the ball a ton more. I see target-wise, if I had to say, I say less than 60.
Oh, I totally
Easily.
can see that.
Easily.
Totally.
And I don't even see him getting past 600 yards, maybe 500 if he's lucky.
Yeah, it's going to be rough for Austin Hooper. I would go as far as to say do not draft. I don't know if you guys agree.
I wouldn't draft him as a tight end 1, maybe as a backup, just to have him there.
Yeah. John?
Let me put it this way. Njoku, in the 4 games he did play, saw 10 targets. Now you bring in Hooper, so 2 targets a game, basically, is what he averaged. Maybe 3. So that's not even counting all the other mouths.
And I didn't even get into how much Baker Mayfield targets tight ends, which is pretty much not at all. Like,
this shows it right here. Even the year Njoku played in 2018, he had 89 targets.
And he led the team. That was the biggest. And if you look at the Browns as a whole, they just don't target the tight end. They might now with Hooper in town, but I don't know, man. The history doesn't indicate that. I think it's going to be a rough season for Austin Hooper. I mean, and honestly, let's just look at other tight ends. Like, if we're talking about Austin Hooper, and this is kind of, I think this is going to blow people away a little bit. But when you look at the tight end position, I'll ask you, would you draft Hayden Hurst or Austin Hooper?
Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst.
I would draft Hayden Hurst. Would you draft, let's say, Rob Gronkowski or Austin Hooper?
Rob Gronkowski.
Gronkowski.
All day long.
Tyler Higbee.
OJ Howard.
OJ is where I might draw the line because Bruce Arians hates his guts. And I don't normally go with that narrative. I know Jake did last year on, I don't remember what player, but he's like, oh, coach hates him. It was actually Kerryon Johnson. But I would take Hunter Henry. I would take Mike Gesicki. I probably would, based on upside. I think he has more upside. Noah Fant. I know you definitely.
I love Fant. So yes.
You love the Broncos. They're going to be the highest flying offense this year, according to Tom. We'll see if that shakes out. What about Jared Cook or Austin Hooper?
Jared Cook.
Jared Cook, just a Drew Brees.
I agree with you. Here's one for you: Darren Waller or Austin Hooper?
Darren Waller.
I would too.
Waller over Hooper. I have to.
Well, that's going to get interesting because you both have Darren Waller on your all breakdown teams, but that doesn't mean these guys are going to stink. I just want to repeat that. So, John, we're going to move on to your all breakdown team. Just to recap mine.
Well, we could probably me and his are very similar. Could probably do both at the same time.
No, don't disrupt the flow of the show, John. Don't disrupt the flow of the show. You already just did.
Well, my quarterback is Lamar Jackson.
I want to recap mine.
Okay, recap.
Making me sad right now. So my quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. My wide receivers, Allen Robinson, Mike Evans. My running backs, Chris Carson, Aaron Jones. And my tight end, Austin Hooper. John, let's move on to yours.
Okay, for quarterback, I picked Lamar Jackson.
You got to explain yourself on that one.
Lamar,
what level of regression are you talking about here?
He's not going to put up 1,200 rushing yards. An insane average of almost 7.
And I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that there will be regression, but he's the consensus number 1 fantasy quarterback right now. That's expert consensus.
He has the highest upside. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he doesn't have a lot of upside. Teams are going to dress him differently this year than last year. They didn't know what to expect out of him. I don't think most teams did not have an answer for him until Tennessee did. And even then, they only stopped him so much.
Yeah.
But I don't see this team. They're not going to pound him with another 100, almost 200 attempts rushing.
But that he's on your all breakdown team, you're indicating that you're looking at a significant regression for him.
Yes, I don't see him getting 1,200 rushing yards. I don't. History, Michael Vick did not even put up 1,000 rushing yards multiple times.
And Tom, you guys do match on this one. You actually have Lamar Jackson as well. So to what degree do you guys see regression for him? Where does he finish rushing yards? Where does he finish with touchdowns in comparison to where he finished
Well, he had
this year?
42 touchdowns combined passing and rushing last year. That's going to drop dramatically, probably 30, 32, which is still a pretty good season. Mm-hmm. He's probably going to get 900 yards. They did add another run. J.K. Dobbins in the draft for running back.
And you know I love him.
And they lost Hayden Hurst on the team, and they didn't replenish him.
Yeah, they didn't really use him, though. I mean, they have Mark Andrews.
But he took away one of the linebackers. Andrews was open down the side.
Yep.
He's your franchise quarterback. You're not going to run I know he has the potential to rush for 1,000 yards like Vic did. And he is a multi-threat. But the
dude ran for 6.9 yards.
Yeah,
per carry.
almost 7 yards a clip with 7 TDs. I can see.
And in his rookie season, which let's remember was his rookie season, he ran for 4.7. And he had 5 rushing touchdowns. In 2019, he had 7.
I can see him getting the 7 touchdowns rushing again. That I can definitely see.
The passing touchdowns is where the big difference
Yes,
was. And let's remember, he only started 7 games. He only started 7 games in 2018. So he was on pace for more rushing touchdowns in 2018 than he got in 2019. But he only had 6 passing touchdowns in 2018. And, of course, 36 in 2019 as the season starter. So even if he played double the amount of games, he would have still only seen like 12 passing touchdowns. Also his rookie season, though, so we have to take that into consideration.
I think a lot of his regression is going to come from passing touchdowns. I think he doesn't see, I say 25 to 28 range. I think some of those throws last year, He threw it. He got lucky, and I'm not saying all 36 were lucky, but I would say a good handful were teams not respecting him throwing at the beginning. He was tearing teams up.
For the record, although he is the consensus quarterback one this year, he ain't going to be the quarterback one. We all know who that's going to be. That's going to be the undeniable Kavorka, Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes was banged up last year. We saw in the playoffs what the real Pat Mahomes is all about. He's taken the throne back. There's no question in my mind. I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to regress to a significant degree, though. I see him finishing as the QB2 or 3. Where do you guys see him finishing?
I got him like 5 or 6.
So not horrible.
No, he's still going to be top 5. I think he won't finish 1. He has a chance for... I don't think he's even number 2 this year. I think he'll finish about 3rd.
So you guys are saying don't draft him ahead of Pat Mahomes, but who else would you draft ahead of Lamar Jackson? I feel like he's easily the number 2 quarterback this year, in my opinion, in terms of where he's going to go in the draft. I can't justify Russell Wilson ahead of Lamar Jackson. I could justify Dak Prescott.
I was going to say Dak.
I could pick.
Kyler Murray, possibly.
Man, Kyler Murray's all hype this year, though, dude. Like, I love Kyler Murray, and I really do think he's going to break out this year. But we thought the same thing about Baker Mayfield last year. Not to get off on a tangent, because I know he will be on the next episode of the All Breakout Team. I'm sure he's somebody's quarterback. But I could see somebody potentially doing that. He's got similar skill set to Lamar Jackson. I think a bigger arm than Jackson, though. I think you guys would agree. Murray's got a bigger arm than him.
They're about the same. You just don't see it. They don't throw the ball down the field in Baltimore too often.
Well, and with a healthy Marquise Brown, does that help Lamar Jackson as well? So I think I'm not too far off from you guys. And when you guys hear Lamar Jackson on both of these guys all breakdown teams, you got to remember it's all about regression. And when you look at a guy that threw 36 touchdowns, that's a lot of touchdowns. That doesn't happen very often. You're looking at the best in the league get 30, and that's a really, really good season. I could see him go down to 30 touchdowns. I could see his rushing touchdowns go up, though.
I think he's going to throw more picks, too. 6 is
amazing. I don't think they
amazing.
structure the offense to put him in the position to throw a lot of picks. I really don't.
But he barely even had tip passes. I just think teams are going to do, perfect example, J.J. Watt, deflecting the ball more. They're going to figure out a way to stop, contain him more. A QB contain.
The problem with him is he's similar to Michael Vick, but I think he's better than Vick. I think he's a better and more polished all-around quarterback than Vick. You just can't defend this guy. It's so hard.
His fakes are
his fakes are unlike anything I've ever seen. He's just so hard for the opposing defense to defend. You can watch all the tape in the world, but if you can't catch a guy, you can't catch a guy. And that's why I think he's still going to be in the top 3 for quarterbacks based on his rushing. Again, I could see his passing touchdowns go down to 25. But I think you're going to see positive regression in the touchdown category. I think he's going to get more than 7 rushing touchdowns this year. So that might balance itself out. Don't disagree with you guys, but people are going to ask, Lamar Jackson on a regression list? But that's why, because you can never assume that a player's productivity, especially at the quarterback position, especially with a guy with a, quote, I guess I'll say, unique set of skills like Lamar Jackson, you cannot assume that you're going to translate 1 year's productivity to the next. You just can't do it. So I see where you guys are coming from with that. I just look at Ryan Tannehill as a much bigger drop-off than what Lamar Jackson's going to see. Who else you got on your list, John?
Aaron Jones, which we already discussed.
Do you guys have anything else to add to Aaron Jones? I think we're pretty good on that.
I just don't see him getting those kind of touchdowns. A lot of that had to do with
it's touchdowns.
Yeah, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, so we'll move on to your next running back.
Which is, I don't have my list in front of me. It's on my phone.
My
I apologize.
Oh, my God.
We are recording with my phone.
Oh, John. Tom, what do I do right now? Derrick Henry, John, is on your list. One would think that you've had this memorized. We are trying to be a professional podcast here, John.
Most people...
I can use the working class spin only to a certain degree here. Okay?
No, I get that.
You have to at least remember your list. Do you remember your list?
I got mine.
Okay. Derrick Henry.
To me, Derrick Henry's one...
I know David Kucher's going to love this segment.
Derrick Henry, to me, is one-dimensional. I will
Friend
say
of the
that.
show, by the way.
I don't see him repeating his performance again. He's not going to get 1,540 rushing yards. He's not with a 5.1 average. It's not going to happen. I don't care how good the line is. I don't care how good he is. Most running back performances, and I know the same can be said about Christian McCaffrey, but Derrick Henry does not catch the ball. And in PPR, I mean, standard leagues are different, but he put up 16 touchdowns. And the fact that he even caught 2 receiving touchdowns baffles me because he's only caught 1 before that. He's never seen more than... Last year was a career high, 24 targets. He's never seen more than 20 targets any season before. The fact is, rushing-wise, he still, yes, he put up a 5.1 average. I don't see that happening. I really don't.
I have a hard time disliking Derrick Henry just because it seemed like once Mike Vrabel got into town, they figured it out with this guy. And they're like, man, this guy is a 250-pound, 6'3" linebacker that plays the running back position. He's a Gronk-like mismatch on the field. How do we not use this guy? And you could tell when they figured it out. It was kind of around week 10, but even then he only had 11 attempts. It was like week 14 in 2018 where they really figured it out. 17 carries, then 33 carries and 21 carries. In the last game, he had 16 carries, and he just started balling out, and he didn't really look back. And when you look at his points for those games, 47.8 in week 14 against Jacksonville, week 15 against the Giants, 30.24, week 16 against Washington, 16.2, and week 17, 11.6 against Indy. And then the next season, which was last year, we were wondering if that was real because we kind of seen spurts of it from him in the past. And it was real, and it was spectacular. And this guy just dominated on the ground last year. And he is proof that you don't have to catch a ton of passes to be a really productive running back.
His first game against Cleveland, he had 28.9 fantasy points. But after that, he wasn't spectacular till about week 9 against Carolina. Even Carolina contained him for 13 carries for 63 yards. It's week 10 on is when he dominated.
But he barely ever gave you single-digit performances. And he averaged 19.6 points a game, dude. When you get 20 points from your running back, are you pumped?
Yes, especially no receptions involved.
But at the same time, you look at the numbers. Other than week 1, he got 28.9. After that, he sees 24.9 in Carolina. But everything after that, yes, it's double digits, but it's 11.8. It's 13.8. I'm not saying that's horrible.
But that's any running back, dude. Any running back's going to give you 11 point weeks.
But 10 of his 16 touchdowns came from week 10 on. And in fantasy, can you depend? Do you really you need those points more at the beginning? I'm not saying you don't need them in the second half, but week 10 on is not going to help you win your championship season.
I just look at him as Christian McCaffrey without the receptions. I really do. Like, his usage is at a Christian McCaffrey level. And even Christian McCaffrey had games last year where he gave you 10 points, 13 points, 5 points. You know what I mean? So, like, even the absolute best in the league gives you that output. I think, and this is my opinion, and I'm kind of, Tom, I'm not really letting you chime in, but I think as long as Vrabel is there, Derrick Henry gets this usage. That's what I think.
He can get 2,000 yards rushing this year. The way that offense is set up for him to ground and pound.
Yeah.
He's on a contract this year, too. He's got
that's a good point,
12
too.
to 15 other running backs coming into the free agency with him next year. So.
That's why I'm high on Fournette this year, too, is because they're going to, number one, they're going to work him into the ground because they're not going to re-sign him in all likelihood. Number two, he's going to be trying to get a big contract. Derrick Henry will also get run into the ground for a different reason, and he's going to be fighting for a big contract. And I mean, even when I look at his touchdowns, I don't see a ton of regression there. I mean, it's not like he scored, 19 touchdowns like Aaron Jones. And he scored 16, but there's still 3 less. The receiving touchdowns, I think you could probably drop those off. I agree with you there. And I could see him go down to 13 touchdowns. But then I'm like, well, who's going to compete for goal line carries with this guy? Like with Aaron Jones, you can point to a couple of possibilities in the return of Devontae Adams. With Derrick Henry, I mean, we went through the list of their running backs a couple shows ago, and I thought Caden was on that list. I think he was. Nobody's going to compete with Derrick Henry. I think an injury is the way you might see some regression from him this year. I think you might see regression. I don't think it's going to be significant. And I know where you're coming from because you've had Derrick Henry where he's totally burned you, and I get that. And I feel that, man. I've been there with players before. But this is Mike Vrabel's Derrick Henry, and I think it's different. Do you think the same?
Oh, yeah. He reminds me of Jamal Lewis back in the early 2000s. Just a big bruising back who got 2,000 yards.
But look at Brandon Jacobs was a huge back when he played for the Giants. He had a great season, then he just fell off.
Yeah,
true. He ran too big. He wasn't fast. He was just a big
and
back.
Derrick Henry's like, I think he's like 4'6" or something.
4'5".
4'5", 40 for a guy that's 250 pounds. He does have that speed. Runs a little bit too upright sometimes, and his footwork isn't great.
I was gonna say he almost stands up when he's running, but
what the hell does his footwork need to be good for? He's a Volkswagen bus out there. You know what I mean?
I think he's more of a second half player than he is a first half.
And that could be too, but I'd rather have him give me 11 points every week the first half of the season and dominate down the stretch.
Playoffs and the championship game right there.
But you could be right. I love when we disagree.
I guess we'll see.
Because somebody's going to get their face rubbed in it. We gotta break out the wheel pretty soon here.
Oh, this spinning wheel?
Yeah, because we might have a bet here on Derrick Henry. So what would the bet be if we had one? Like, do you think Derrick Henry's out of the top 5 for running backs? You have to think that.
Do I personally think it? Yes.
So maybe that's the bet. We'll figure it out. We'll bring the wheel in. Wait till you guys see the wheel. It's going to be awesome. But moving on, what do you got for wide receivers? I'll tell you just in case you.
I know 2 of.
Just in case your memory is a little
Michael
short.
Thomas.
It is Michael Thomas, which shocked me. Again, I can see regression with him though. So what are you thinking? What are your thoughts with Michael Thomas?
I love Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas is fantastic. You know that.
Yeah.
And I'm
so
not.
Last year, just in case you were wondering, we had a show, and John provides a lot of comedy, unintentional probably at some points, but comedy nonetheless. And he was talking about Michael Thomas, and Jake and I kind of threw it to him, and he's just like, he paused. And then he said, Michael Thomas! And then just kind of paused again. So it was really awkward and weird. But that's what we love about John. He brings the fun to the table here at the Working Class Podcast. Anyway, Michael Thomas, what do you got on him?
Okay, Michael Thomas, I see him regressing. Not in the fact that he is... It doesn't matter if it's Breeze or if it was Bridgewater last year. He was the number 1 target there. And he got fed a lot of targets. 185 to be exact. 149 receptions. I don't see that happening. And there's a couple reasons why. You have a healthy Kamara back.
Just for the record, that is a lot of receptions.
It's a record. It's a record.
Yeah,
so
literally.
There's usually regression after a record year. Usually.
Yes. I don't think anybody's beat their own record, to my knowledge off the top of my head.
If all people could, it might be him.
So
it is possible.
But it's baked in that's going to come down.
But I think it comes down for a couple reasons. They've added Emmanuel Sanders. Finally, a number 2 that's a number 2. And I think he's going to take some of those targets away and help open up the game more. You also have an Alvin Kamara that is back to 100%, or presumed 100%. And I think that he will funnel some more of those targets this year. I do see Michael Thomas being safe for about 140 targets. That's a safe spot.
I think you're going to see what you saw in 2018. About 100. He had 147 targets, which was pretty common for him. The year before, he had 149 and 125 receptions. I think that's his ceiling in 2018 with the addition of Emmanuel Sanders.
In his touchdowns, he's like, other than 2017,
they're not out of the question.
No, they're 9.
Like
they're 9.
Yeah,
I just don't see.
And also, I mean, we mentioned Kamara. He's had 9 touchdowns 3 of his 4 seasons. So
must be a Saints thing,
I guess. I don't know.
But
Breeze is very consistent.
Michael Thomas will be a top 3 receiver, top 5. I just don't see
top 3. So I think with top 3, you can't really. I don't know. It's hard for me to say the guy's going to regress when he's going to go from number 1 to number 3. it's hard for me to say that that's regression.
It can be.
I can, I guess, from a total point standpoint. But if he's losing, let's say he's losing 25 receptions, that's 25 points if you think his touchdowns are going to stay the same.
Now shave off about,
his yardage,
Let's shave off 325 yards.
I think, yeah. So I think you're going to look at a 2018 type of finish, basically. 1,400 yards, 125 receptions, nine touchdowns in that range. He's pretty much an 11 to 12 points, yards per reception type of guy every single year. Literally, he hasn't been over 12 or under 11 his whole career. But I still think I think he's the wide receiver 2 behind Davante Adams. And I know a lot of people disagree with me on Davante Adams, but who's going to fight for that crown, Tom, other than these two guys?
DeAndre Hopkins,
maybe
Julio Jones. I had him on my list as a regression, too. Just simple fact. 149 receptions, 725 yards. Those are unheard of numbers through the years. They're going to regress.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's going to drop from number 1 to number 10. It just...
So Michael Thomas is on your list as well?
He was mine.
Oh, interesting.
And Michael Thomas only had one game of single-digit fantasy points, and conveniently, that was the last game of the year, so he didn't play the whole game.
Yeah, and I get what you guys are saying. Like, just because regression doesn't necessarily mean, a difference in rank. It means a difference in points. And, if you're saying, it's 100 less points, but, and it could be. In 2018, he scored, well, this is standard, so I should probably adjust this.
I have it.
In standard, he scored 190.5 and 225 this past year. That's a big difference. And
almost a 60-point difference.
For PPR?
From 2018 to 2009 in PPR.
Yeah, so PPR, it was 315 in 2018 to 374 in 2019. So when you put it into that perspective, I guess you guys... I guess you're steering me in your direction. It's a lot. That's a big regression there.
I'm not saying he doesn't have the
but you're still drafting him kind of where you're drafting him now. But you can't expect what you got.
You can't expect the same results.
You can't expect him to be basically a league winner for you.
Not with me.
We had a guy that got so lucky and got Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas and
Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey.
It was just, he did a great job. You got to give him credit for having those guys, especially Jones and Jackson. And that's how you win leagues. You get those later round guys like Jones and Jackson that completely pop.
He has the Oliver Gress team this year.
I think there's going to be a lot of regression on that team, so we'll see how it goes. What do you got for have we gone over your other wide receiver yet,
No.
John? This one I like. I have some points on this one.
I have Julian Edelman.
Do you have him too, John?
I did not.
Okay, all right.
And I'm a Pats fan, and I will say that Mr. Brady is...
Well, for now you are.
Wow. I'm still a Pats fan.
October, different
kinda,
story.
Yeah, kinda. I'm just saying, bro. You ain't gonna be the only one, so it's okay. It's okay if you jump off the bandwagon.
You have to remember, Edelman last year saw a little dip in his fantasy points per game. He dipped down to 16, which isn't awful for points per game. It was actually, production-wise, his best fantasy year. Believe it or not, 256 points. Previous years, even with Brady, 207, 230.
Can you look up, John, what year Brady was suspended? I don't have that. Because I think it was it 20,
I have it.
2017?
2016.
No, I was going to say, because Edelman was out, I think, most of 2017, if not all of it. So in 2016, I think, how many games did Brady miss that year?
He missed 4.
Not to stomp out your fire here, but you're looking at missed 4 games in week 1 and week 2 with Garoppolo. He scored 15 and 14 points there. Took a dip, though, with Jacoby Brissett, only 9 and 2.7 in those 2 games. So is Jarrett Stidham Jacoby Brissett, or is he Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think he's like a mix, to be honest. I don't think he has Brissett's running upside, but I think the offense is going to be tailored different for Stidham. Like we were discussing before the show started, I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. Belichick's going to go back
Not
to
if they're behind.
They're going to have to throw. But I think they're going to run the ball a lot more and depend on the defense. Stidham, I think, I compare him to Matt Castle in a way, with a little more upside. Matt Castle, in his year he started, had 21 touchdowns. So I think Edelman will take a dip. I don't think he's going to have, he had 100 receptions last year. His career high before them was 2013 with Brady. So I see, for me, Edelman this year, I see about 70 receptions, what he did in 2018, which was 74 receptions, 850 yards, 6 TDs. So he would dip from 256 for points to 207.
Look, I'm just not a Jarrett Stidham guy. But, and I think because he's not going to be great, that's just a hunch on my part, and I can kind of back it up. We kind of went over some stats before the show, but, I mean, looking at him in college, he threw 8.5 yards per attempt. Brady threw 7.5 yards per attempt. So that's right in Edelman's wheelhouse. In some of the feedback from the breakdowns on Stidham out of college, he can throw a pretty ball with a tight spiral with the conditions are perfect. He takes bad sacks. Movements in the pocket are unpredictable and often his undoing. Melts down under pressure late in games when attempting to come from behind. These are not qualities that Tom Brady had. To me, Edelman's going to be a security blanket for Jarrett Stidham because I don't think Jarrett Stidham's going to be that good. And when you look at their schedule, guys, I mean, just the first few weeks, they got the Eagles. No, that's preseason. They got the Dolphins week 1. Shouldn't be a tough game there. They're going to have to fly high against the Seahawks. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes.
The Raiders, the Chiefs week 4. They're going to have to fly high against the Chiefs. Then they have the Broncos, Tom, and you love them. And then the week after that, they have the 49ers. I mean, they're just, these games are going to be situations where the Patriots can't just sit back and run the ball. I don't think. And I don't know that, I mean, let's look further into the schedule. Buffalo Bills.
Defense.
That could, I mean, Buffalo, these are a lot of times high scoring games. But Buffalo plays New England. The Jets the next week, the Ravens, the Texans, the Cardinals, the Chargers, wait and see there. The Rams, high powered offense, and then the Dolphins again, then Buffalo, and then New York. These are a lot of good offenses that they're playing, and they're not going to be able to sit back and run the ball, in my opinion. I think Edelman's going to get a lot of work here. I don't think he's going to give you the output that he gave with Brady, but I don't look at Stidham as a guy that is going to connect with N'Keal Harry. As much as I want it to happen, I don't think it's going to. Now, let me ask you guys this, and that's my take on Edelman. I think Edelman will be fine because I don't think Jarrett Stidham will be. But there's going to be implied regression because he was so much of a favorite target for Tom Brady. What if Cam Newton rolls into New England?
He can't throw the ball shallow. He throws the ball way too high to all his
So that
receivers.
would be big-time regression for Julian Edelman.
Oh, yes.
But for a N'Keal Harry,
It'd be better.
so it's I just in my bones, guys, I'm still not convinced that they're doing this. Unless they're tanking for Trevor. That was my first instinct, and I really believe that could be a possibility that they're just going to have a crap season so they can get Trevor Lawrence, and then we got to watch 20 more years of this crap. I can't see it. I can't see them saying, yep, Stidham's our guy. And there's still Cam Newton out there. Just saying. But that's not a thing right now. I think as long as Stidham's out there, Edelman's going to be okay. That's my take.
I also think the other part of it is, let's not forget, Edelman's not a young pup anymore. He's 34.
He's not.
He's 34.
And the next hit could be the last for him.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Age is catching up to him, and it's starting to show. The injuries are starting to, you know what I'm saying? Last year, he played hurt quite a bit. Lingering injuries, and I think this year will continue. Like I said, I'm not saying a complete drop-off of like 100 receptions down to like 30.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing about 70.
Yeah.
I think low 70s.
What do you think, Tom? And a question I'll throw at you too is what factor do you think James White's going to play in this offense?
He's going to help Stidham if he's out there just to get the ball out quick. But I do agree with John about Edelman's about 70, 75 receptions, about 800 yards.
So what makes him so different than James White? Because they play a similar role.
Youth does have a lot to do with it.
Okay. But as far as game script, You guys are saying that it's going to be a run-based game script.
I think it's going to be more run-based game.
With conservative passing. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think they're going to try to stick to the dink and dunk, but you're not going to see Stidham throw the ball 47 times.
Here's what I think. I think dink and dunk is all well and good when Tom Brady's your quarterback. How many other teams in the league do dink and dunk? Because they can't execute it. Because they don't have Tom Brady.
They don't have the reads.
Can Jarrett Stidham see through his progressions like Tom Brady? I don't know. Probably not, based on what I'm seeing. Can Jarrett Stidham get that chemistry with his receivers like Tom Brady? Can Jarrett Stidham push his receivers like Tom Brady does? You drop a pass, you're going to hear about it from Tom Brady. And you're not going to want to hear it again. Like, there's just so many things that Tom Brady brings to the table. And you can't assume that Jarrett Stidham is going to bring that same level of stuff to the table. I will say this. Whoever he locks into as the guy that he has chemistry with is going to have probably a really good season. But I don't think you can sit here and say that's not going to be Edelman. It is going to be White or whomever it may be. I mean, we'd love to see N'Keal Harry break out. I just don't know if this offense is built for that. I think Edelman's going to be okay because I don't think, like you guys said, I don't think the offense is going to change that much. With that being said, I think Julian Edelman's a good fit for that, for what they do and what they've done over the years. That's my take. You guys think it goes in a different direction. But I'm not hearing a lot of convincing points on how that's going to happen.
I just think their offense changes dynamically. It's not the same offense we've seen in the past. I think, like I said, I think it becomes more run-based. And I don't think they're going to tailor this offense more for Stidham. They didn't have to tailor the offense for Brady. Brady knew the offense. Let's be honest, half the time he probably created some of his plays in the huddle. Stidham's not going to have that type of freedom. His game is going to be scripted by the coaches.
The offense is going to have a lot more 3-and-outs this year as well. Brady always got that 3rd and 7 completion to Edelman. That's not going to happen as much as it was in years past.
I could definitely see that, and there is room for improvement on the rushing side of it. They did finish 18th in rushing last season, so they're middle of the pack, more toward the back side, but pretty much middle of the pack. Could be right, but I look at Edelman as like a pass-catching running back. I really do, and that's why I think he'll be okay. But we'll wait and see on that. We won't spend the whole show on Jules, as much as he is a fun guy to watch. All right, your tight end. You guys do share this, so I'll let you guys kind of spout off on Darren the Baller Waller right out of Las Vegas. Tom, I'll let you start with this one.
He just came out of nowhere. He played 3 seasons in Baltimore, had substance abuse issues, and blew up for 90 receptions, 1,145 yards. He only had 18 receptions in 3 years beforehand.
Ooh. So that's a guy that is primed for regression to the mean. I look at numbers like that, and it is alarming to see somebody break out that much. What about Mariota? Does he end up working his way into the starting role there?
Who knows? Gruden just likes the hot quarterback as much as any other guy.
And Derek Carr didn't have that horrible of a year last year.
No, but he loved Darren Waller. And
yes.
Darren Waller played 16 games, too, which he hadn't done up to that point.
But let's also factor in, look who's there now. We got Ruggs there.
Yep.
We have a healthy Josh Jacobs.
Healthy Hunter Renfrow. He played well down the stretch last year.
He did.
Renfrow, I like.
Tyrell Williams. We have, remember.
Don't forget Brian Edwards, guys.
Yeah.
I like Brian Edwards a lot.
Antonio Brown, left, well, I didn't say left, but was gone from the team a few weeks before the season started. They didn't really have time to replace him. Waller benefited from this than anybody. Tyrell Williams missed how many games, or was not completely healthy for how many games?
Let's not forget, guys. I mean, he's an oldie, but maybe still a goodie. Jason Witten rolled into town in Las Vegas as well, which I didn't like that signing because I didn't think it was good for Darren Waller. But he's a legitimate tight end. He's not going to be out there for every play, obviously. But he's going to be out there on 2 tight end sets. And he's about as reliable as they come as Jason Witten. I'm more concerned about Jason Witten than anything else. But I do agree with you, Tom. I'm even looking at okay, can I get anything out of fantasy points per game from this guy to compare? And it's not there for that either. He just didn't have it. Like you said, he was a 6th-round pick So not a very high pick. Baltimore picked him 204 overall in 2015 out of Georgia Tech. And now all of a sudden he explodes onto the scene. They added a lot to the passing offense. This guy's tailor-made for regression. I totally agree with you guys on this one. Not as much as I do in terms of pairing him against Austin Hooper. I think Hooper sees a bigger drop than Waller does, because I don't think Waller has the competition at a pass-catching level that Hooper does. I really don't. But so I think there will be a baseline there, but I could see him going down to 70 receptions easily. He didn't catch a ton of touchdowns, so that was a non-factor.
But he had 117 targets as a tight end.
That's a lot.
You're talking George Kittle,
because he was
Kelsey.
like you guys said, he's the only option. Well, now he's not the only option. And the more I read about Henry Ruggs, the more I like, I think Henry Ruggs, he's a field stretcher, but I think they're going to try to use him in the Tyreek Hill type of role where you can throw to him and he's 10 yards away from you and let him do the rest, So I really like Henry Ruggs this year, and I think he's going to be a big factor for Darren Waller's, maybe not demise, but definitely some big-time regression I think is going to happen here. Also the guy we talked about, Ernie, had on his team. He's got the all-regression team this year. So that covers it for John. Tom, what do you have that John didn't have, I guess?
Nick Chubb.
All right, talk to me about Nick Chubb.
Kareem Hunt. It's just 2 words. That's all you need to know.
I like it.
He had 1,494 yards rushing last year, and that's going to go down dramatically. He had 36 receptions. Most of those came before Kareem Hunt was even on the field.
Is that it?
Pretty much.
You think Nick Chubb can still be 1,000-yard rusher?
They both can be 1,000-yard rushers. They did that in 1985 with Kelvin Mack and Ernest Biner. That could be the same type of backfield.
I love it. That's
Fantasy
what I love
Yoda
what
with
you
the
bring
stats.
to the table, man. That's awesome stuff. I couldn't agree more with you. I do like Nick Chubb. I do like what he brings to the table, and I do like him as a solid running back too. I don't like his ADP. He's way too early. He's a first and second round pick in a lot of cases, where Kareem Hunt, you can get him in the 5th round, sometimes 6th round. And I think you're going to get similar productivity. The team has said they want to use both guys. Kareem Hunt said, we're using both guys. Kareem Hunt said, we're going to dominate the offense, basically. And I don't disagree. I mean, I hate to say it, but Odell might once again be on the outside looking in. He's a trade candidate, too. I look at him as a guy that he just doesn't fit what they're trying to do. He's going to be Stephon Diggs this year, I think. He's going to be that guy that's going to suffer from the style that they are going to play. Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, all going to be nice fantasy assets. But Nick Chubb isn't going to have the ceiling that you thought he had last year because Kareem Hunt is there.
Well,
his numbers went down significantly once Kareem Hunt came back. I mean, he had 5 single-digit games from week 11 on when Kareem Hunt was there, and that was in PPR. Hunt completely changed the dynamic, and Hunt was slightly better down the stretch in terms of consistency, and their points were almost identical when they were both on the field. That's the change that Kareem Hunt brings. But while you will see, I think, a lot of regression from Chubb, I think they're both really valuable, and I think you agree with that.
With Thunder and Lightning out there, both those guys together.
The thing I like about this is you compare it to Minnesota last year, because that's the coach we have now. He ran the ball a lot. So Chubb does have that upside of possibly getting the high rushing yards and the touchdowns. But like you said, when it comes to PPR, he will completely drop off because of Hunt. But Hunt's more almost like a Dalvin Cook than Chubb is. So I see Hunt, you can get him a bargain, 5th, 6th round, maybe not later.
Hunt was the number 1 running back in fantasy not that long ago. And then he did something really stupid and inoffensive. And it cost him a big chunk of his career. And it cost him a workhorse role. But how many times have we seen guys that aren't in workhorse roles? Look at James White. Perfect example. Kareem Hunt's going to have a nice year this year, and you're going to get him for a steal.
Hunt could also have the chance, if they both have good seasons, they could trade one of them at the end of the season, too.
Yeah. He'll have a nice year, going to be a steal, and it's going to be, unfortunately, at the expense of Nick Chubb, but it's not going to kill Nick Chubb. I agree with you totally on that one, Tom. What else you got?
And Devontae Parker.
Why do you hate this guy?
I guess
we convinced him last week to
no.
like him. Didn't we convince you?
9 total touchdowns his first 4 years. His contract year where he gets paid, he gets 9 touchdowns.
That's a good number.
Yeah, for 4 years for 9 touchdowns and 1 year for 9 touchdowns.
Yeah, I guess.
He's also has the hardest schedule in the NFL for what? Well, Miami does.
He also doesn't have Adam Gase holding him back anymore. Hey, listen, I kind of agree with you on Devontae Parker. I don't think he's going to be worthless, though. I mean, he's going to be the number one target there. I hear you on Preston Williams, but Preston Williams, we don't even know if he might be on PUP to start the year. That's a real possibility. And Devontae Parker's going to rake in those situations. Like you said, he performed with Williams out there last year. Not as good, but I think maybe those are the games that you could see the output for Devontae Parker this year is the games that Preston Williams was in. But Devontae Parker was still pretty good in those games. So if he has
Ryan Fitzpatrick is at quarterback, if Tua is in there, the offense is going to completely change this year. He's a left-handed quarterback coming into the NFL. There's no NFL quarterbacks that are left-handed anymore.
And I don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of when Tua Tagovailoa is out there at quarterback.
Well, let's not forget, too, they didn't have a run game last year at all. At all.
True. It was awful.
At all.
It was so
Now you
bad.
had Jordan.
Kalen Ballage is probably the worst starting running back ever in the NFL.
What about Laird?
He wasn't a starter, but he was he was horrible too. It was awful. And they traded away Kenyon Drake, one of the most electric guys down the stretch. But that's Miami being
But
Miami.
now you had Jordan Howard, who's that ground and pound on first and second downs, and you had Breida.
Yeah.
So he's already going to lose. Let's factor in Preston Williams coming back. So let's see his targets go to 7, 8 a game. Now you figure in Breida. They didn't have a pass catching back last year at all. So Breida, even if he takes 3 to 4 targets a game, that's 3 or 4 targets. It's either going to be Gesicki, Williams, or Parker losing it. And I have a feeling it's going to be a mix of all of them.
Gesicki, he is a wild card too. He's a guy that could definitely turn it around, and I think we saw that last year. He did flash last year. I don't know. Devontae Parker finished as the 11th overall wide receiver last year. These are the guys that finished behind him. Just a few names: Jarvis Landry, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, DJ Chark, Tyler Boyd, Cortland Sutton.
I like that Cortland
John
Sutton.
Brown, A.J. Brown, Michael Gallup, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Odell. We'll stop there. I would take most of those guys over Devontae Parker.
Me too.
I think the only ones that I wouldn't take are definitely Cortland Sutton. He's trash. I'm just kidding. I'd probably take Sutton over him this year. I don't think I'd take John Brown over him. I don't think I'd take A.J. Brown over him, and I know that's not a popular take. And I probably wouldn't take Tyler Boyd over him. And Tyler Lockett I never liked drafting either. But that's just 4 guys out of, that giant list there.
His consensus ADP is 62. I'm all set.
That's it. That's not bad, though. That's your wide receiver, too. But again, if you can get if you can get DJ Chark, I love DJ Chark, and you guys might not be as high on him as I am. But if DJ Chark's sitting there and Devontae Parker's sitting there, I might break my finger trying to hit the DJ Chark button. I'm going to hit it so hard. And even like a DJ Moore, God, I would definitely take him over Parker. And, even going a little bit further down the list, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, I'd probably take those guys. So it's interesting to look. And, you guys know I love to look at who else is there and who would I take over him. There's a lot of guys I would take over Devontae Parker this year. And it's the Dolphins, and the Dolphins got a Dolphin. They're going to screw something up somehow. It's going to happen. So we're all pretty much in agreement on Devontae Parker. You got anything else, Tom?
No, that's it.
No.
Everything's the same.
All right. You guys hate Michael Thomas. You guys hate Lamar Jackson. You guys hate Aaron Jones.
We never said hate. We just...
I know. But yeah, that's what it's all about, regression, guys. And the reason we do these episodes isn't to tell you to not draft these guys. It's to tell you that you're not going to get the same output that you got the year before. And you need to temper your expectations.
And careful of the warning signs. Like,
look at the variables.
Yes, when a player sets a record, there's reasons these were records. The chances of them happening again, except for my bold take, one Christian McCaffrey.
Was that a bold take?
Those bold
1,000 yards rushing
It'll be the
receiver
first-
2 years in a
I
row.
2 years in a row.
guess.
No one's ever done
He's
it.
had one good hot take, and he's hanging his hat on it ever since.
Come on, that was a bold call.
Well, we get a lot more positive in the next episode. It's the all breakout team, and we're going to talk about some guys that should make a big jump in the right direction this year. So that's going to be really fun. And until then, this has been the Working Class Podcast, the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. we'll see what John can do next show to make us laugh at or with him, depending on how it goes. Hopefully you have a laptop, by the way. You can put a lot of information on that. It's a very handy tool. It's a MacBook too, so it's a really fancy one. But anyway, until then, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening to and supporting the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Please like, subscribe, leave us some nice reviews on Apple Podcasts. So we would greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you next time around.
See you guys.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.